The Queen of the Ice Dragons. Chapter 1. The Fleet Approaches. The void shook with fire. An alien armada swept through the solar system, a tide of black metal and burning suns. Their ships were vast, jagged leviathans, bristling with weapons that could peel the crust from a planet. Each vessel carried the hum of annihilation, a resonance that echoed across the vacuum like a funeral bell. Mars was the first to fall. The domed cities that had taken centuries to build shattered in minutes. Orbital cannons fired desperately, streaks of light against the black. But the alien fleet's response was merciless. Plasma lances carved through the atmosphere, boiling oceans into vapor. Survivors screamed into calm channels, their voices cut short as the red planet burned. Saturn's colonies followed. The great orbital rings, once symbols of human ingenuity, were torn apart, scattering debris like shattered halos. Neptune's moons were reduced to dust, their icy cores ripped open and consumed. Each strike was precise, surgical, as if the aliens were not conquerors but erasers, intent on wiping civilizations from existence. And now their course bent toward Earth. On Earth, humanity braced for extinction. Defense satellites lit the skies, fleets scrambled from orbit, but the sheer scale of the enemy was overwhelming. In underground bunkers, leaders whispered of surrender, of a war already lost before the first shot was fired. Yet in their arrogance, the aliens made a mistake. They left survivors. Deep beneath the frozen crust of Jupiter, hidden in caverns carved by storms older than Earth itself, something stirred. A cathedral of ice glimmered in the darkness, its walls alive with auroras trapped in crystal. At its center, upon a throne of frost, sat a beautiful queen. Her body was encased in crystalline armor, her eyes closed, her breath slow and ancient. Around her lay hundreds of dragons, vast and terrible, their wings folded, their minds dormant. Each was a storm given flesh, a psychic titan bound in slumber. The queen's dreams had been long and heavy, filled with echoes of forgotten wars. But now the screams of dying civilizations reached her. The alien fleet's arrogance reverberated through the cosmos, and the queen's mind stirred. Her eyes opened. They burned with vengeance. The cavern shook as the dragons awoke, their psychic cries echoing across Jupiter's storms. Ice cracked, wings unfurled, and the air filled with the scent of ozone and fire. The queen rose from her throne of ice, her gown shimmering with frost and flame. She touched the minds of her brood, and they answered with a roar that shook the planet's core. The aliens had overlooked them, and now the queen of Jupiter's ice dragons would follow the fleet to Earth, not as a savior, but as an avenger. Chapter 2. The Queen Awakens. The cavern of ice trembled as if Jupiter itself had drawn breath. Cracks spider-webbed across the crystalline walls, releasing bursts of light trapped for millennia. The dragons stirred, their massive bodies shifting beneath layers of frost, wings unfurled with a sound like glaciers breaking, and psychic cries rippled through the chamber, shaking the very storms above. At the center, upon her throne of frozen flame, the queen stood. Her eyes, two suns of cold fury, opened fully, and the cavern filled with a silence so absolute it felt like the pause before a storm. She reached outward, not with words, but with thought. Across the void, she touched the dying echoes of Mars, the shattered rings of Saturn, the dust of Neptune. She felt the arrogance of the alien fleet, their laughter carved into the screams of the fallen. Her voice was not spoken, but thundered through the minds of her brood. Awake! The stars burn. The enemy comes. We rise. Dragons roared in answer, their psychic resonance shaking the cavern until shards of ice rained down like meteors. Each beast was immense, wings spanning dozens of meters, bodies carved from living storms, their minds linked to hers, a chorus of vengeance bound by blood and flame. The queen stepped forward, her bare feet leaving tracks on the frozen floor. She was older than Earth's civilizations, older than the wars of men. She had been bound in slumber by choice, waiting for the moment when the cosmos would need her wrath. That moment had come. Above, Jupiter's storms churned violently, lightning arcing across the planet's endless sky. The dragons rose from the cavern, breaking through the crust in a storm of ice and fire. Auroras blazed across the atmosphere as hundreds of wings beat in unison. The queen lifted her head, gazing toward the distant blue world. Earth, humanity, survivors who still fought against annihilation. Chapter 3. The Oath of Vengeance. The void was silent, but the queen's mind was not. She stood upon the shattered crust of Jupiter, her brood arrayed behind her like a storm-given flesh. Hundreds of dragons hovered in the upper atmosphere, wings beating against the planet's eternal gales. Their bodies glowed with psychic fire, their eyes burning with the fury of awakening. The queen lifted her head, gazing toward the stars. Beyond the black horizon, she felt the alien fleet moving, fast, arrogant, unstoppable. She tasted their cruelty in the echoes of dying worlds. Mars's final screams still reverberated in her mind. Saturn's broken rings whispered of despair. Neptune's moons cried out in silence. Her voice thundered across the minds of her brood, not spoken but carved into thought. They have erased the children of the stars. They have mocked the fire of life. They believe themselves eternal. They are wrong. The dragons roared in answer, their psychic resonance shaking the storms of Jupiter until lightning split the skies. Each beast bent its mind to hers, a chorus of vengeance bound by blood and flame. The queen spread her arms, and the auroras of Jupiter bent to her command. She was not merely a monarch, she was justice incarnate, forged in ice and fire, tempered by centuries of silence. She declared her oath, "We will follow them. We will hunt them. We will burn their fleet to ash. For every world they have destroyed, we will carve their memory into the void. For every scream they silenced, we will roar louder. For every life they stole, we will take vengeance." The dragons bowed their heads, their minds aflame with love and loyalty. Above, the storms parted, revealing the distant glimmer of Earth. Humanity fought desperately, unaware that allies older than their species now stirred. The queen felt their fear, their courage, their fragile hope. She did not rise for them, but she would not let them fall. With a roar that split the heavens, the queen used her mystic powers and launched into the void, her brood following like a river of flame and frost. The alien fleet had overlooked Jupiter. They would not overlook her again. The hunt had begun. Chapter 4. Earth's Last Stand. Earth quaked beneath the shadow of the alien fleet. Cities braced for annihilation, skies filled with orbital fire, and humanity's defenses strained against the inevitable. Railguns thundered from orbital stations, missile silos roared from the continents, but the enemy's ships were endless, black leviathans blotting out the stars. Then the heavens split. From the void, a storm of auroras descended. Dragons, hundreds of them, streaked across the sky, wings trailing fire and frost. At their center flew the queen, both beautiful and terrible, her wild hair refracting light into a spectrum of flame and ice. Unlike her brood, she wielded vast powers beyond flesh and blood. She flew alongside her dragons, her unseen energy radiating with the force of hurricanes. Yet her true weapon was her mind. The queen's psychic force rippled outward, invisible yet devastating. Alien ships froze mid-maneuver, their pilots clutching their heads as their minds shattered under her telepathic scream. Hulls buckled as she focused her will, bending metal as if it were ice. Plasma cannons misfired, their energy redirected into explosions that consumed their own fleets. Her dragons fought with brutal ferocity, talons tearing through armor, firestorms igniting the void. But it was the queen who turned the tide. She was a weapon of thought and flame, a storm incarnate. Earth's soldiers watched in awe. Fighter pilots felt her presence in their minds, guiding their reflexes, sharpening their courage. Infantry on the ground looked skyward as auroras blazed across the atmosphere, knowing they were no longer alone. The aliens responded with fury. Assault ships swarmed the Queen, plasma lances cutting through the air. She met them head-on, her mental shield deflecting fire, her psychic scream ripping through their ranks. Dragons fell beside her, torn apart by enemy fire, but she pressed forward, her vengeance unrelenting. Above burning cities, the Queen hovered, her brood circling like a storm. She gazed down at Earth, not as a savior, but as a warrior bound by vengeance. Humanity's fight was hers now, not out of mercy, but out of justice. The battle had begun. Chapter 5, Clash in Orbit. The skies above Earth burned. Alien assault ships swarmed the planet's orbit, blotting out the stars with jagged silhouettes. Their weapons lit the void in streaks of plasma, tearing through defense satellites and vaporizing orbital stations. Humanity's fleets fought desperately, railguns hammering, missiles streaking. But the tide was overwhelming. Then the dragons arrived. A storm of auroras split the heavens as the Queen and her brood descended. Hundreds of wings beat against the void, each dragon trailing fire and frost. Their psychic cries rippled across the battlefield, shaking the minds of alien pilots. Ships faltered, their formations breaking as fear seeped into their thoughts. The Queen led the charge. Her glowing essence cut through the darkness. She flew alongside her dragons, her psychic force unleashed in waves of destruction. Alien cruisers froze mid-maneuver, their hulls buckling under her telepathic scream. Plasma cannons misfired, redirected into explosions that consumed their own fleets. Dragons fought with brutal ferocity. Talons tore through command centers, claws ripped open hulls, and firestorms ignited the void. Frost breath froze enemy ships solid, shattering them into shards of glittering debris. The battle was merciless, a ballet of destruction across the heavens. Humanity rallied. Fighters flew alongside dragons, weaving through alien fire. Pilots felt the Queen's presence in their minds, guiding their reflexes, sharpening their courage. "Stay with me." Her voice thundered across their thoughts, and they obeyed, striking with precision they had never known. The aliens countered with fury. Assault ships swarmed the Queen, plasma lances cutting through the air. Dragons fell beside her, torn apart by enemy fire, their bodies burning as they drifted into the void. Yet the Queen pressed forward, her vengeance unrelenting. She hurled her psychic force into the flagship's shields, cracking them like glass. Above Earth, the battle raged. Cities below watched auroras blaze across the skies, knowing their fate hung in the balance. Humanity's fleets fought with renewed strength, dragons roared with fury, and the Queen's wrath carved a path through the enemy. The clash in orbit was brutal, merciless, and unforgettable. For the first time, Earth had hope. Chapter 6, Brutality in the Skies. The battle in orbit had become a storm of fire and ruin. Alien assault ships swarmed like locusts, their plasma lances carving through the void. Earth's fleets fought desperately, weaving between debris and dragonfire, but the enemy pressed harder, their numbers endless. The skies above the planet glowed with destruction, a tapestry of burning wreckage and shattered hulls. The Queen soared at the center of the chaos, her power vast enough to eclipse the stars. She flew alongside her brood. Her psychic force rippled outward, crushing enemy minds, bending steel, and turning weapons against their masters. Yet the aliens struck back with merciless precision. Plasma cannons tore through dragon wings, shredding flesh and bone. Bodies burned as they drifted into the black, their roars silenced forever. The Queen's fury deepened. She hurled her mind into the enemy flagship, her psychic scream ripping through its crew. Pilots clutched their heads, blood streaming from their eyes as the ship faltered. She seized its weapons with her will, turning its plasma lances against its own fleet. The flagship burned, consumed by its own fire. Below, Earth's cities watched the skies blaze. Dragons streaked across the atmosphere, mingling with the fire of battle. Humanity's soldiers fought with renewed strength, guided by the Queen's presence. Pilots felt her voice in their minds, urging them forward. Strike, burn, do not falter. The battle was brutal, merciless, and unforgettable. Dragons fell, humans died, but the alien fleet bled. For the first time, the enemy faltered. The Queen hovered above the wreckage, her brood circling like a storm. She gazed down at Earth, not as a savior, but as a warrior bound by vengeance. Humanity's fight was hers now, and she would not relent until the skies were free. The brutality of the skies was only the beginning. Chapter 7. The Alien Counter-Strike. Space burned with wreckage. Shattered hulls drifted like corpses across the black, dragon fire still smoldering in their remains. Humanity's fleets clung to survival, their fighters weaving between auroras and plasma storms. For a moment it seemed the tide had turned. Then the aliens unleashed their fury. From the heart of the Armada, colossal warships emerged, vessels larger than cities, bristling with weapons older than Earth's civilizations. Their hulls glowed with stolen suns, energy harvested from the destruction of worlds. At their center pulsed a weapon unlike any humanity had ever seen: the gravity lance. The Queen felt its power before it fired. A psychic tremor rippled across the battlefield, a vibration that clawed at her mind. She screamed in defiance, her mind beating against the void, but the lance struck. Space itself bent. Dragons screamed as the weapon tore through their ranks, ripping bodies apart with invisible force. Wings shattered, scales peeled away, and entire broods were crushed into fragments of ice and flame. Human ships buckled, their hulls collapsing inward as if swallowed by the void. The Queen's fury ignited. She hurled her psychic force against the lance, but its power was immense, a weapon designed to break gods. Her dragons rallied, fire and frost lashing against the warships, but the enemy pressed harder, their assault relentless. Earth shuddered below, cities shook as shock waves rippled through the atmosphere. Oceans boiled, mountains cracked, and humanity watched in horror as the skies burned. The Queen's mind surged. She reached into the thoughts of her brood, binding them tighter, amplifying their fury. Together they struck, dragons tearing through warship hulls, psychic screams ripping through alien crews. Yet the lance fired again, and more dragons fell, their bodies drifting into the black. The battle had shifted. No longer was it a clash of claws and plasma. It was a war of annihilation. The aliens had revealed their true weapon, and the Queen knew, if the lance was not destroyed, Earth would fall. She roared, her voice echoing across the minds of humans and dragons alike. "Strike with me, burn with me. We end this weapon, or we end together." The counter-strike had begun. Chapter 8. Humanity joins the fight. The skies above Earth blazed with ruin. Alien warships pressed their assault, plasma lances tearing through orbital defenses, while the gravity lance pulsed again, bending space and crushing ships into fragments. Humanity's fleets faltered, their courage fraying under the weight of annihilation. Then the Queen's voice filled their minds. It was not sound, but thought, vast, resonant, undeniable. Every pilot, every soldier, every commander felt her presence. She did not speak in words, but in visions, dragons soaring beside fighters, talons tearing through hulls, firestorms igniting the void. She showed them victory. not as a dream but as a path. "You are not alone," her voice thundered across their thoughts. "Strike with us. Burn with us. Fight with us." Pilots gasped as their reflexes sharpened, their fear replaced with clarity. Infantry on the ground felt courage surge through their veins, their exhaustion burned away by her psychic fire. Humanity rallied, their fleets weaving alongside dragons, their weapons striking with precision they had never known. Dragons roared in answer, their minds linking with human soldiers. Bonds formed in the chaos of battle, man and beast united, thoughts entwined, strength shared. A pilot felt the heartbeat of his dragon partner, his hands guided by claws unseen. A soldier on the ground saw through dragon eyes, his rifle steady as firestorms blazed above. Together they struck. Alien ships faltered under the combined assault. Plasma cannons were torn apart by dragon talons, railgun fire ripped through weakened shields, and psychic screams shattered enemy crews. The Queen herself hurled her mind into the gravity lance, cracking its core with sheer will. The alliance was brutal, merciless, and unstoppable. Humanity fought with renewed strength. Dragons burned with vengeance, and the Queen's wrath carved a path through the enemy. Below, Earth cities watched in awe. Auroras streaked across the skies, mingling with the fire of battle. For the first time, humanity believed survival was possible. The Queen hovered above the battlefield, her presence vast, her eyes burning with fury. She gazed down at Earth, not as a savior, but as a warrior bound by vengeance. Humanity had joined her fight, and together they would not relent until the skies were free. The war had changed, the alliance had been forged. Chapter 9. The Queen's Wrath. The battlefield was collapsing into chaos. The alien fleet pressed forward, their colossal warships bristling with weapons, their gravity lance pulsing with annihilation. Each strike bent space itself, crushing dragons and ships into fragments. Humanity's fleets faltered, their courage fraying, their defenses breaking. The Queen hovered at the center of the storm, her wings vast, her scales shimmering with auroras of flame and frost. She felt the lance's tremor clawing at her mind, a resonance that threatened to unravel thought itself. Dragons screamed around her, their bodies torn apart by invisible force. Humanity cried out below, cities trembling under shock waves. She roared, her voice echoing across the minds of humans and dragons alike. "This weapon ends. Tonight, it dies." With a single leap, she launched into the void, her brood following like a storm of fire and ice. Alien warships swarmed to intercept, plasma lances cutting through the air. But the Queen pressed forward, her psychic force unleashed in waves of destruction. She hurled her mind against the lance, her scream ripping through its core. Pilots clutched their heads, blood streaming from their eyes. As the weapon faltered, cracks spread across its surface, light bleeding from its seams. Yet the warships pressed harder, their assault relentless, their arrogance unshaken. Dragons tore through bulkheads, claws ripping open armor, firestorms igniting the void. Frost breath froze enemy ships solid, shattering them into shards of glittering debris. Humanity's fleets struck alongside them, railguns hammering, missiles streaking, their courage renewed by the Queen's presence. The lance fired again. Space folded inward, crushing ships and dragons alike. The Queen screamed, her fury igniting. She hurled her mind into the weapon, her psychic force amplified by her brood. Together they struck, their combined will hammering against the lance. The weapon cracked, light bled from its seams, its core trembling. The Queen pressed harder, her mind burning, her body aflame with vengeance. She felt the lance's power clawing at her, threatening to consume her, but she did not relent. With a final roar, she shattered the weapon. The gravity lance exploded in a storm of icy flames, its energy consumed by the Queen's wrath. Warships burned, their hulls torn apart by the blast. Dragons roared in triumph, humanity cheered, and the battlefield blazed with victory. The queen hovered above the wreckage, her presence vast, her eyes burning with fury. She gazed down at Earth, not as a savior, but as a warrior bound by vengeance. The lance was destroyed, but the war was far from over. The queen's wrath had turned the tide. Chapter 10: Fire Over Cities. The alien fleet descended. Warships broke through the atmosphere, their hulls glowing with plasma fire, their weapons aimed at the cities below. Skyscrapers trembled as shock waves rippled through the air. Oceans boiled where ships fell. Forests ignited in storms of flame, and humanity braced for annihilation. The queen followed. Her shining light tore through the clouds, her brood streaking beside her like rivers of brilliance. Dragons roared as they dove into the atmosphere, their psychic cries shaking the foundations of cities. Auroras blazed across the skies, mingling with the fire of battle. The clash was brutal. Alien ships hovered above burning streets, plasma cannons tearing through buildings. Dragons struck with savage ferocity, talons ripping open hulls, firestorms igniting avenues, frost breath freezing war machines. Solid human soldiers fought below, rifles blazing, missiles streaking upward, their courage renewed by the Queen's presence. The Queen herself hovered above New York, her eyes burning with fury. She hurled her psychic force into the enemy, crushing ships mid-air, bending steel, shattering mines. Plasma cannons fired at her. But she deflected them with sheer will, turning their energy into storms of fire that consumed their own fleets. The city became a battlefield. Skyscrapers collapsed, streets burned, and humanity fought street by street against the invaders. Dragons swooped low, their claws tearing through tanks, their firestorms igniting enemy war machines. Soldiers bonded with dragons, their minds entwined, their strength amplified. Together they struck with precision, their alliance brutal and unstoppable. Yet the aliens pressed harder. Warships unleashed storms of plasma, drones swarmed through the streets, and humanity faltered under the weight of annihilation. Dragons fell, their bodies burning as they crashed into buildings. Soldiers died, their screams echoing across the ruins. The queen roared, her voice echoing across the minds of humans and dragons alike. Stand, burn, do not falter. Her fury ignited. She hurled her mind into the new flagship above the city, her psychic scream ripping through its core. The ship faltered, its weapons misfiring, its hull cracking. Dragons struck, tearing it apart, their firestorms consuming it in a blaze of destruction. The skies above New York blazed with victory. Humanity cheered, dragons roared, and the queen hovered above the wreckage, her eyes burning with vengeance and sorrow for her fallen dragons. The battle for Earth had begun in earnest. Chapter 11: The Dragon Bond. The war had descended into Earth's streets. Skies burned with fire, cities trembled under alien bombardment, and humanity fought desperately against annihilation. Dragons swooped low, their talons tearing through war machines, their firestorms igniting avenues, their frost breath freezing tanks solid. Soldiers fought beside them, rifles blazing, missiles streaking upward, courage renewed by the Queen's presence. Then something extraordinary happened. A pilot, his fighter crippled and spinning toward destruction, felt a presence in his mind. It was not human. It was vast, ancient, and terrible. A dragon's thoughts surged into his own, steadying his hands, guiding his reflexes. His craft leveled, his weapons fired true, and alien ships burned. He gasped, realizing he was no longer alone. Across the battlefield, bonds formed. Soldiers felt dragon eyes watching through theirs, their aim sharpened, their courage amplified. Dragons felt human determination, their fury tempered by strategy, their instincts sharpened by mortal will. Together they became something new, living weapons, man and beast, united in thought and flame. The queen hovered above the battlefield. She felt the bonds forming, threads of thought weaving between humans and dragons. She amplified them, her psychic force binding the alliance tighter, forging unity in the chaos of war. "You are one," her voice thundered across their minds. "Together you are stronger. Together you are eternal." Dragons roared in answer, their voices echoing across the skies. Soldiers cheered, their courage renewed, their strength amplified. The battlefield blazed with unity, man and beast striking as one. Alien warships faltered under the combined assault. Plasma cannons were torn apart by dragon talons. Railgun fire ripped through weakened shields, and psychic screams shattered enemy crews. The queen herself hurled her mind into the flagship above, her fury amplified by the bonds below. The ship cracked, its weapons misfiring, its hull burning. The alliance was brutal, merciless, and unstoppable. Humanity fought with renewed strength, dragons burned with vengeance, and the Queen's wrath carved a path through the enemy. Below, Earth's cities watched in awe. Auroras streaked across the skies, mingling with the fire of battle. For the first time, humanity believed survival was not only possible, it was inevitable. The dragon bond had been forged. Chapter 12. The Siege of New York. New York burned. Alien warships hovered above the city, their plasma cannons tearing through skyscrapers, their drones swarming the streets like locusts. The Hudson boiled under bombardment, bridges collapsed into fire, and humanity fought desperately to hold the line. The Queen descended through the storm, her image shimmering with auroras of flame and frost. Dragons roared beside her, their psychic cries shaking the foundations of the city. Firestorms ignited avenues, frost breath froze war machines solid, and talons ripped through alien armor. Alien drones swarmed through the streets, their weapons tearing through soldiers. Tanks rolled across avenues, plasma cannons burning through buildings. Humanity faltered, their courage fraying under the weight of annihilation. Dragons swooped low, claws tearing through war machines, firestorms igniting enemy ranks. But the aliens pressed harder, their assault relentless. The Queen hovered above Times Square, her eyes burning with fury. She hurled her psychic force into the enemy, crushing drones mid-air, bending steel, shattering minds plasma cannons fired at her. But she deflected them with sheer will, turning their energy into storms of fire that consumed their own fleets. Soldiers fought beside dragons, their minds entwined, their strength amplified. A rifleman felt dragon eyes guiding his aim, his bullets striking true. A pilot soared above, his fighter weaving alongside wings of frost, his reflexes sharpened by psychic fire. Together they struck with precision, their alliance brutal and unstoppable. Yet the aliens pressed harder. Warships unleashed storms of plasma, drones swarmed through the streets, and humanity faltered under the weight of annihilation. Dragons fell, their bodies burning as they crashed into buildings. Soldiers died, their screams echoing across the ruins. The Queen roared, her voice echoing across the minds of humans and dragons alike. "Stand, burn, do not falter." Her fury ignited. She hurled her mind into the flagship above the city, her psychic scream ripping through its core. The ship faltered, its weapons misfiring, its hull cracking. Dragons struck, tearing it apart, their firestorms consuming it in a blaze of destruction. The skies above New York blazed with victory. Humanity cheered, dragons roared, and the Queen hovered above the wreckage, her wings vast, her eyes burning with vengeance. The siege of New York had ended in fire and survival. Chapter 13. The Queen's Sacrifice. The skies above Earth blazed with ruin. Alien warships still swarmed, though their numbers had thinned. Dragons circled in ragged formations, their wings torn, their bodies scorched. Humanity's fleets limped through the void, battered but unbroken. For a moment it seemed survival was possible. Then the super flagship arrived. It was vast, a leviathan of black steel and stolen suns, its hull bristling with weapons older than Earth's civilizations. At its core pulsed a reactor of annihilation, a stolen star bound in chains of gravity. Its presence eclipsed the battlefield, its shadow stretching across continents. The Queen felt its power before it fired. A psychic tremor clawed at her mind, a resonance that threatened to unravel thought itself. She roared in defiance, wings beating against the void, but she knew. This ship was not merely a weapon, it was the heart of the fleet. Dragons struck, their firestorms blazing against its shields, their claws tearing at its armor plates. Humanity's fleets hurled missiles, railguns hammering, but the flagship endured. Its weapons unleashed storms of plasma, its drones swarmed through the skies, its reactor pulsed with annihilation. The Queen hovered at the center of the storm. She felt the bonds of her brood, their minds entwined with humanity's, their strength amplified by unity, yet she knew it would not be enough. The flagship's reactor pulsed again, its energy tearing at the planet below. Cities trembled, oceans boiled, mountains cracked. Earth could not withstand another strike. The Queen's decision was instant. She hurled herself into the heart of the fleet, her body tearing through warships, her psychic scream ripping through crews. Dragons followed, their firestorms blazing, their claws tearing, their fury unrelenting. Humanity's fleets struck alongside them, their courage renewed by her presence. She reached the reactor. Its energy tore at her, burning her mind, tearing at her body. She screamed, her voice echoing across the minds of humans and dragons alike. For vengeance, for justice, for survival. Her fury ignited. She hurled her mind into the reactor, her psychic force amplified by her brood, her body aflame with vengeance. The reactor trembled, cracks spreading across its core, light bleeding from its seams. With a final roar, she detonated it. The flagship exploded in a storm of fire and frost, its energy consumed by the Queen's wrath. Warships burned, their hulls torn apart by the blast. Dragons roared in triumph, humanity cheered, and the battlefield blazed with victory. But the Queen was gone. Her body was consumed by the blast, her nearest dragons torn apart, her mind silenced. She had sacrificed herself to destroy the heart of the fleet, to save Earth from annihilation. Dragons circled the wreckage, their roars echoing across the skies. Humanity mourned, their cheers tempered by grief. The Queen's sacrifice had made the difference, but her absence left a void. The war was not over, but Earth had survived. The Queen's sacrifice had saved them all. Chapter 14. Silence After the Storm. The battlefield was quiet at last. Fragments of alien warships drifted across the darkness of space, their jagged hulls glowing faintly as they cooled. Dragons circled in ragged formations, their roars muted by grief. Humanity's fleets limped through the skies, battered but unbroken, their pilots staring in awe at the wreckage of the super flagship. The Queen was gone. Her sacrifice had shattered the reactor, detonating the heart of the fleet in a storm of fire and frost. The weapon was destroyed, the flagship consumed, and Earth had survived. Yet her absence was a wound that cut deeper than any battle. Dragons mourned, their psychic cries echoing across the skies. Humanity bowed their heads, their cheers tempered by tears and grief. Cities smoldered below, skyscrapers lay in ruins, oceans boiled, forests burned. Survivors crawled from the wreckage, their eyes lifted to the skies where dragons soared. They saw not monsters, but guardians, creatures bound by sacrifice, allies forged in fire. The queen's brood hovered above the planet, their wings vast, their eyes burning with sorrow. They felt her presence still, faint but eternal, woven into the bonds she had forged. Humanity felt it too, her voice lingering in their minds, a whisper of vengeance, justice, and survival. The war was not over. The aliens had fled, but whispers spread of survivors regrouping in distant galaxies. Yet Earth stood scarred but unbroken, its skies free, its people united. The silence after the storm was heavy, but it was not hopeless. The Queen's sacrifice had saved them all. Epilogue. The Eternal Flame. Years passed. Earth rebuilt, its cities rising from the ashes, its people stronger, wiser, united. Dragons lived among humanity, guardians of a scarred but surviving world. Bonds deepened, man and beast entwined, their strength amplified by unity. Together they forged a new civilization, one born of fire and frost, vengeance and justice. The Queen's legacy endured. Her sacrifice was remembered in monuments carved from ice and flame. Her roar echoed in songs sung across continents. Humanity spoke her name with reverence. Dragons carried her memory in their hearts, and the alliance she had forged became eternal. From the brood, a new dragon queen emerged, young, fierce, and ready to lead. A true dragon form. Her wings shimmered with auroras, her eyes burned with fury, her voice thundered across the skies. Humanity pledged loyalty, dragons bowed their heads, and the war against annihilation continued. Yet the first queen's presence lingered still. Her voice whispered in the minds of her brood, her fury burned in the hearts of humanity. Her sacrifice echoed across the stars. She was gone, but she was eternal. The queen of Jupiter's ice dragons had become more than a warrior. She had become a flame that would never die. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.